So I'll quickly get started introducing our speakers for today. We have Dave Milton from Microsoft, who's currently supporting the Global Belt Power Platform team as a technical director. And we have Jagan Jami from Acuvate as a COO here. And they both are going to cover the topic enabling enterprise hyperautomation with agentic AI, the buzzword right now, and everybody and anybody wants to know about it. I'll quickly move into the agenda for today. The agenda is enterprise innovation with agentic AI is going to be covered by Dave today, yeah, from Microsoft, and the rest of the session where Jagan will provide us insights on the hyper automation space and how agentic AI is going to really help in elevating it altogether. And yeah, we have some great live demos followed up, some real world use cases that you'll get to see. This is our first webinar, so clearly you guys are the first ones to see the live demos in action. One of the very few Microsoft partners to show up with these demos, and we'll have the interactive Q&A towards the end. Some housekeeping rules that we need to all have in place. If you have a question, there is a Q&A box on the right above the chat box. Please leverage it and post in as and when, if we are able to take up the questions or the speakers are able to cover those questions while they're speaking, we'll have them covered or we'll take them up towards the end. But do make sure that you leverage the Q&A box. Then we have the participation on the polls. Soon you'll be seeing one poll come up before we get into the whole webinar. Please choose the one, the suitable option that the poll provides, and then it'll basically give us insight around what you're looking at, how can we make it more relevant in the webinar and after the webinar, and maybe collaborate on how we can go along in future and provide you with insightful details. Yeah. So here's your first poll right now. And has your organization started exploring or implementing agentic AI? That's the one. And please go ahead and share your views on this. I hope the poll is visible. Yep, just checking if I'm seeing some answers before we deep dive into Dave's session. Okay. So this basically is trying to understand. I know everybody's trying to know about agentic AI, but is there something that you're already exploring within your enterprise on any specific use case you want to get started with? Or are you brainstorming around which do you want to prioritize and things like that? A lot of questions will get answered, but definitely if this is something that you're exploring, please share your views with us. I will soon go forward. Yes. Handing it over to Dave. Dave, you want to get started?
Yeah, would love to. So great to see everybody, and thanks for the poll responses. I see most folks are just exploring options, and of course, today we're talking about agentic AI, and I feel a need to at least level set on some definitions because at Microsoft, no one's ever accused us of being great at naming things. But when we say agentic AI, we are obviously talking about agents on the right side of the screen. Agents are going to be aligned to business process, and certainly when we talk about autonomous agents, which is where I'll focus mostly today, that's what we're looking at. In contrast, we've also got plenty of products with the name Copilot in them, and we see Copilots as personal assistants for humans. So just moving forward, when you hear me say Copilot, I'm really talking about the thing that every person on the planet will have as a personal AI assistant. It's also generally the user interface through which you'll experience agents, and then agents are tied to business process, so one to many here. Now, on the next slide, what I introduce is the fact that Copilot Studio is our product for creating agents. There's a lot of different types of agents that are out there. I'll talk a little bit about those here in a moment. But the great thing about Copilot Studio is that it's a single platform that allows you to build your own standalone agents. So certainly autonomous agents, that's again the focus of today. But we can also use Copilot Studio to extend the Microsoft Copilot. So a lot of different functionality here, but ultimately one product surfaced in many ways to allow organizations to derive value across a wide spectrum of capabilities. So on the next slide, I break down into the actual spectrum of agents. And I'm sure most of us have already heard about some of these. So certainly retrieval agents, these will generate or use RAG patterns where we effectively go into an information source. We take a prompt from an end user, transform that into a query, pull some data out of one or many sources, reason over that data and the results, summarize them, and ultimately answer questions. So we've been doing that for quite some time now. And I think a lot of organizations have already started to experiment or even deploy retrieval agents. They're relatively pretty simple, although obviously they can be complex depending on the data source. We can also build task-focused agents, though. And task-focused agents are great because they take action on behalf of end users. So if there are things like I needed to submit a trouble ticket into my IT desk, or I wanted to go and create an entry, in a database for me. These are things that now agents can do, and we can expose through thousands of connectors that we've got out of the box with Power Platform, as well as custom connectors that you can also configure. Copilot Studio can take action from within agents anytime, whether that's something initiated by an end user or it's something that will be initiated through a trigger. And speaking of triggers, autonomous agents, where we'll focus mostly today, are where agents can simply operate independently. So they're not sitting around waiting for somebody to give it a prompt. These are agents that are waiting and listening to signals from your enterprise system. So it could be as simple as when an email arrives, or it could be records entered in a database. It launches into action and can orchestrate really a whole series of logic, actions, retrieval, whatever else that we need it to do. Um, so on the next slide, I break that down a little bit in terms of what are autonomous agents, because obviously there's a spectrum. I do want to make it clear, agents don't just live in one category or another. So obviously you can build very complex and sophisticated agents that might be autonomous, that also execute tasks and do some retrieval. But there are some keys that do separate an autonomous agent from any other type. Clearly the first one is that it's got to be proactive. So we're looking for signals across the business. When I say looking for signals, really that comes down to is they are triggers that use our connectors, again, from the Power Platform, or you can configure custom connectors to allow it to respond to some business event. Once it's got that trigger, great thing that it can do is look across really a whole series of tasks that you've made available and actions that you give the agent access to, and it will use instructions to decide which action does it need to do, when does it need to reach out for human intervention, if necessary, what the next step should be, and continue processing on. And they're incredibly adaptive. I'll get into an example a little bit later, but the great thing here is that we can effectively now handle multiple branches without having to create a very rigid set of logic like we would with traditional agents. And there's a ton of momentum here. On the next slide, what we talk about is there's a huge opportunity for autonomous AI. And if we just hit the next slide here, what you'll see is that Gartner's even predicting from their 2025 top technology trends that at least 15% of day-to-day work decisions are going to be made autonomously through agentic AI. And really, like, that did not exist in the year 2024. So 0%, we're starting from zero here. But that's a very fast trajectory, to get 15% of all day-to-day work decisions being made. So we know that there's a lot of momentum here. We know there's a lot of value. But yeah, let's look at this diagram here, which is essentially laying out the difference between an autonomous agent and a traditional agent. Now, at the bottom of this diagram, there's really three steps in kind of a gray box that you see there. Right? A traditional agent, when it handles a process, effectively has to take predetermined steps. So it's deterministic. The customer asks for a refund, we move to the right. Agent asks for the customer, move to the right, initiate refund process. So it's rigid, not really flexible. It can break pretty often if it encounters any roadblock whatsoever. But it can work when things are highly repetitive or predictable. So we're not saying use this for everything. If you have a very, very predictable, deterministic process, having a traditional agent, that's great. Or use traditional automation tools. We've got them in Power Automate and the Power Platform, certainly. But the challenge is when we have more of a scenario that requires us to adapt. This is where autonomous agents come in, because what we can do is give it a set of instructions and a set of actions. And based on the context, like the information that comes in from the trigger, so in this case, maybe it triggers on an email coming in from a customer asking for a refund. It can use the context of that email, the content there. It can look at standard operating procedures that might be authored in a document, some unstructured data, pull that in, take that into consideration, and then determine a plan for how it's going to execute. So you can see the difference. Like run one, that goes through the deterministic path, but run two might take a separate branch, and I don't have to code that into the agent, right? So I'm not building a giant tree of logic, through some tool. I'm simply giving it the building blocks and the instructions, and the agent is able to make those decisions and invoke those actions at the time necessary. Now, on the next slide, what you'll see is that Copilot Studio not only enables you to build autonomous agents, but we also provide like a full life cycle for these agents. So yes, you can go and create them. It's a fully SaaS product, so you're not responsible for any infrastructure, for any networking, any of that. You simply select how to initiate the agent. You give it access to knowledge sources, to APIs, to actions. You can even go and describe, your own rigid logic or topics, as we call them, for things where you need more control. And then you can get full monitoring and analytics out of the box with Copilot Studio, and even integrate with more advanced resources from Azure AI Foundry when you need to. So really, there's no cliffs here. You're really able to get started very simply and move into very sophisticated agents, but still have your traditional application lifecycle management process that you're going to need for enterprise scenarios. I'll just end with a couple of quick examples here. You'll see demos later, so I'm not going to have demos in my portion here, but these are examples. Yeah, on the next one, like with McKinsey, we had a great example where they took a process for initiating an engagement with a client, which had been taking them, up to 20 days to actually get a client onboarded, which is really not the first impression you want as a company like McKinsey. So they were able to use autonomous agents to effectively go through and orchestrate all the different actions that have to happen from across the company, reduce that lead time by 90%. So seeing incredible results there with a very complex and mission critical process. On the next slide, I have Accenture. They took a very complex process for supplier discovery. If you just go to the next slide, we'll see that example where complex and challenging process where for suppliers they have to analyze capabilities, they have to ensure that those suppliers meet the requirements. It took a lot of different people and a lot of different time to actually get through that. And I'm sorry you're not seeing the slide right here, but it is the next one here. I've got a third example as well beyond that for Pets at Home, which is the UK's leading pet care business. Created an agent that helps actually resolve customer complaints and returns, but effectively ended up reducing fraud, because a lot of fraud will get pushed through in a retail business through the returns process. And now they're able to use tons of resources and expertise to make quick decisions based on that data and help empower them to solve problems quickly. So those are just three examples. On my last slide, I've got tons of ideas out there that we've seen from different industries. These were just a few examples, and you're going to see from Acuvate some real world problems that they've solved as well. So I just encourage you as you attend the rest of this webinar, be thinking through the types of ideas and the use cases that you could bring and that autonomous agents could help transform in your organizations. But with that, Neha, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this presentation. While I move forward, Jagan, do you think you want to be presenting because you have the demos and all?
Yeah.
Andy? Yeah.
Let me try. Let me try once more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Okay. I'm doing that now. Okay. Are you able to see
Meanwhile,
my
there's a
screen?
poll. While yeah, we're able to see your screen, but there's a poll that has come up. Has your organization started exploring or implementing agentic AI solutions? Yep. Let me. Okay, that wasn't the one, rather. Okay, what is your organization's primary goal for adopting agentic AI? That's the current poll that I was supposing. Maybe because I didn't answer the earlier one, it just popped up to me again. So, yep, let me just go ahead and submit it. And then now you're good to go ahead and present, Jagan. And there are some interesting answers that you might want to pick as your cue to, start off your presentation with.
Okay, did you submit the poll? Because I didn't get the poll, Neha.
Yeah, that's because you're presenting. So
Okay,
that's the reason you wouldn't see it. That's what
no,
happened with
no,
me.
no
Yep.
worries, no
So you
worries.
have 33, sorry, rather 44% of people opting for operations and productivity
Mhm.
as their
Okay,
primary goal for adopting agentic AI, interestingly, and followed up with customer experience. Yes.
fantastic. Okay, thank you, Neha. Uh, Hi, everyone. So let me just quickly cover who we are before I jump into the actual discussion. Quickly browse it through. Acuvate is a IT services company. We've been there doing this kind of work for past 18 years. We primarily have three important practices: the AI and automation practice, data and analytics practice, and the workplace modernization practice. They're serving across US, UK, and Europe and Middle East, and we have our offices there. Our primary, USP, as you may say, is how we go to the market with accelerators, especially in the space of, earlier the chatbots and cognitive services, and then subsequently copilots, and then now with the whole agent space. We've been, working very closely with Microsoft and built bunch of accelerator solutions, which will allow enterprises to quickly adopt to this new technology, primarily get realize their business value rather than worry about what's under the hood. So that's who we are. Here are some of our customers. Yeah, obviously this journey of ours with Copilot and of course with now with agents have been quite successful and has been regarded even by Microsoft. We were one of the very few companies across the globe where we've had our tool Optimum, which is a migration tool for moving your legacy chatbots onto Copilot, has been recognized. And if you would have any such use cases, feel free to talk to us. I'll talk a little bit about it towards the end in this presentation of what this tool is about. We also have a lot of our implementations published by Microsoft as case studies. The recent one being the Holland America, Copilot, the agent implementation, a very, very successful implementation that was even spoken by Satya Nadella in some of the conferences recently. Okay. Um, Before I get into the actual use cases story, just with respect to agentic AI, uh, we offer a bunch of service offerings, right from how we could help you get started, which is with the consulting and assessment offering. We do these fast track workshops to get you onboarded to this technology, take use cases and do proof of value, not ranging more than 4 weeks so that you can actually see it in action. The COE models to help build multiple use cases for you. Agent security and governance, setting up the governance is an extremely important aspect that every organization is looking into. So we work with implementing the best practices, the governance kits available with Microsoft, and we've enhanced them with a few of the enterprise needs and help organizations with security and governance. Chatbot agents are some of the basic proposition of building chatbots, through Copilot or custom Copilots or custom even custom chatbots, in various scenarios for HR, IT, supplier, customer experience, etc. We have been doing a lot of work in this area for the past 5, 6 years. We also are, help organizations, set up their enterprise generative AI platform itself by, defining the enterprise governance, the enterprise connectors, so that it's easy to roll out use cases at scale for the business users. Okay, so that's the Gen AI application space. Now, of course, with the whole autonomous agents coming in, we are helping organizations build advanced agent applications, multi agents that surround applications, not necessarily chatbot interface, but it could be whether your applications insights through analytics, all of them having agents working for it. Finally, the hyperautomation itself. The hyperautomation, where we are actually seeing results much better than the traditional RPA doing this job, exactly because of what actually Dave showed you, where the rigidity, the business rules driven applications built using RPA chatbots can be much better performing with autonomous agents, where its ability to reason, its ability to be able to do multiple, plans to be able to execute a task, etc., comes from the hyperautomation capability. We talk about replacing your RPA or building better solutions along with RPA, cognitive services, and search services. These are our service offerings from Acuvate. Let's just jump into the agent space itself. I think some wonderful examples that you have seen when Dave actually explained the concept of what agentic AI is. But if you look at it broadly, at least with Acuvate's experience, we've seen agents that can be built across these five areas. First one is the operations and the productivity area. This area primarily focuses on, building agents that are helping your day-to-day operations for various departments to bring in operation efficiency, compliance and audit needs, etc. Second one is the customer experience, specifically for your consumers and customers, to be able to give them the experience of service, engagement, even commerce through agents. The next one is the business experience agents, which is where you're talking about dealing with the source to pay process with suppliers, vendors, distributors. How do you service them? How do you have some of the interactions handled by agents? That's the business experience side of things. Data experience is an area where you can bring in the structured and unstructured data side together and provide insights, so that faster decision making can happen. And finally, the employee experience, your hire to retire process, where you can bring in much better employee experience, right? So if just to give you some use cases that we've been seeing and we have been implementing across all of these, for the operations and productivity, I would like to show you the demo of the Analysis Next tool. Of course, Analysis Next is something that we coined, but idea is that when you have multiple systems, right, and these systems have their data sources in silo manner, how can an autonomous agent in a multi-agentic framework can help get the necessary insights for you? The case, I can talk to you about a use case which will give you a much better idea in the next slide. The next one is the operations next, helping with factory operations, where let's say time series data or batch data is being analyzed by your the site engineers, and it is being mixed with your manuals or incident data or the CMME data to help you get better insights. Content generation using generative AI, document comparison, another very, very effective and easy implementable use case, where you are able to see, let's say a guidelines document or from a vendor, compare it with a vendor submission, or even compare between multiple versions of a guidelines document that is there to know what exactly has changed across versions. How do you make sure that any kind of document is following a certain guidelines? So we built multiple use cases using generative AI, which used to be a traditional mechanism, was very difficult to build. So that's the document comparison use case. Machine vision use cases, especially for quality inspections, is another use case that we have built. EDHR analysis, which is very specific to manufacturing industry, where the device health record is a very large document that the manufacturing companies produce, especially when you have to deal with post-market complaint analysis. You actually need to go back into this document, figure out what exactly has gone wrong, right from procurement to packaging, and identify the gaps there. So people who are in this process from a quality control standpoint, can really get benefited with an EDHR analysis use case. Yeah. So analysis next is a great example of how you can actually see the benefit of this agentic AI. So imagine this is for a, let's say a maritime cruise company. Now cruise company by law has their crew members doing a lot of trainings on a regular basis. Some are on monthly basis, some are on quarterly basis, and essentially mandatory trainings to make sure that the safety and compliance is maintained. And also by law they need to they have to maintain a record of every small incident happening on the cruise, right? So they have their incident database, they have their HRMS database where they have active crew member details, they have their LMS database where all the training plans are there, and finally they have their policies where for a certain role what's the right training to be given, right? So if you see these different databases are sitting on separately, imagine an LMS analyst who is responsible for making sure the right trainings are in place, and then the incidents, less and less incidents are happening. He's trying to analyze why this incident happened, and he goes across all these systems to arrive at, oh, because this particular training was not done properly, or there was a certain training was missing from their curriculum. So these analysts are going across multiple systems to do it, but there is a standard pattern to it. They go to this system, get this data, map it with this data, and things like that. That can be done through agentic AI, and that's what we accomplished. We're able to weave through this whole thing and have an agent do and come back with insights. The beauty of this is, of course it gives you the summary, but it also gives you how it has arrived at that summary through a thought process, right? So that's what our first demo is. Let me just play this demo and start, keep explaining it to you. Imagine you are, let's say this is the front end for a training, sorry, the incidents person. So he's just probably having some kind of an application where he's seeing the incidents, etc. So there's this cruise called SS Oceanic or MV Horizon Star. He's going ahead and clicking on the incidents that have happened. So he sees these incidents. Now let's see, he sees a bunch of incidents that have happened. Now he wants to analyze them. Let's say he clicks on this analysis button. Typically this is a reasoning engine. So when you click on this, it takes its time. It goes through a bunch of information across all these systems I've spoken to you about, and it would arrive at a certain summary that would be useful for actionizing, especially from a training point of view, right? So it might take a little bit of time. So once it's able to, it does that analysis, okay? It comes back with a summary, right? So if you see here, the summary kind of says that the incident on Horizon Star happened on so and so day, involved a coolant leak that necessitated the temporary shutdown of the engine. The leak was addressed, and it talked about the incident details. It then also understood who are the roles involved with that, and then it also said that there is a pending training on emergency repair procedures, which is critical to the. So it has gone across multiple systems to be able to come up with an insight here, right? This is typically going across systems and getting these insights is where analysts spend, and that's what this particular agent has mimicked and got you the information, right? So of course you can ask further details to it. You could go ahead and ask question about, for example, let's say what are the other crew members training, for example. Let's say, let me say provide information about the crew trainings. Okay, so here it goes back and it checks for the remaining team members. The same agent is having the context of what happened, so it would come back and give you further information regarding, okay, here are the people, right? It will also show you the analysis of how it has arrived at. So let's say, see here, it can show the thought process. The data retrieval team agent has summarized. The training agent went ahead and got the recommendations from the training, and the master agent is giving you the details, right? So there is, a thought process that is shown. This is very important from a governance standpoint to show why a certain summary has been arrived at and what were the key data points it has gathered along the process, right? So that's with respect to this. Of course, imagine it is not, you can also provide it on Teams. You can provide it as a chat support where a similar such question can be asked, and you could actually get the details around, like for example, imagine I don't have the incident details. I know a particular person and I want to check on his training analysis. I used Michael Brown and I asked him for the details. It gave the same kind of information, but it started off with going to the HRMS database, and then come up with the information. So you can see all of that in this thought process, right? So you can see that it went to the incident agent, it went to the HRMS agent, it went to the policy agent to identify what exactly happened. Yeah. So this is an example of a multi-agent working together to arrive at a goal that will help analysis of the training plans. Okay. So this is one example, right? The second one is on the customer service area, customer experience area, where you could build B2C agents, which will help, service your end customers. It would understand, of course, it has a much better way to understand the natural language way of dealing with, but also go across systems to serve the person. So a customer service agent and a customer engagement agent is quite popular in this area. But you could also give this agent to your human agent who is servicing the customer so that he can help the customers better. That's the human assistant, human agent assistant per se, or people call it agent assistant. Yeah. I'll pass this. This is a pretty standard one, considering the time. So I can actually show you the demo of one of the customer service agents that we have built. This is for a company called Holland America. They've used it very, very effectively. So if you can see, let me use the, okay. So if you can see here, so the simple questions like what's there in the FAQ of the website, though it can of course answer that and of course give you a leading question and also pointing to the necessary site. These are all typical FAQ questions per se, right? You can also, of course, ask questions related to the bookings, etc. So some of these bookings related information would come in from this, right? So here, cruise and tours, it asked for the timeline, etc. Let me just also show you in the, okay. This is a dialogue that it continues based on the information given. And then it would provide you, recommendations on, various trips per se. And we've used Copilot Studio for this, and we've also, customized it in such a way that the UI has been customized because Copilot Studio would allow you to do that, so that you can actually have the user do the end-to-end workflow of booking from here itself. Okay, so this is one example of the customer service use case, right? Um, on the business experience side, we built the supplier agents, procurement agents, and the vendor pre-qualification agents. When Dave was mentioning about McKinsey use case where they were, from an onboarding standpoint, we've actually seen that, we have worked with one of our customer where they actually had to do a vendor pre-qualification, and that involved a checklist that has some 18 steps in which each step might require them to go to an external website or go to an internal website to check the information and then qualify whether this is met or not. And they have built an RPA bot for that. The problem with that RPA bot is, every time there is a small change on the third party website, or there has been any change to the URL, any basic changes, it takes the bot down. So there is a continuous monitoring that is required. So the TCO of the automation is getting killed by the number of people that is required to maintain it, and it's a very, very critical thing for them. So they would have someone monitoring it continuously and continuously repair or do it manually in case the RPA bot is failing, right? So what we've done is we've used the power of agentic AI using Magentic One framework and of course Azure OpenAI and Power Automate to be able to replicate this process without necessarily having an RPA process do with it. Right? The customer was using earlier a UiPath process. We completely converted it. It took 20% of the time, and it was, the failure rate has come down by 90% on this particular use case, right? So it's able to go in and you're not hard coding anything, right? You're just asking the bot to go in and verify for, let's say, search for a vendor name, and then come back with the results and pick up the result from it and get some information from the result. All of that is prompt driven, and hence it would know and dynamically replan if it has seen any changes on the website, etc. And that's why this works much more effectively than a rule-based chatbot per se. Okay. So that's the vendor pre-qualification. So I'll just quickly show you the demo of that one. Imagine you have email that come through where you are need to check the vendor status, right? Of course, this is a backend thing where it would go and kick off a process. That process would have simple steps which will involve calling Azure OpenAI for extracting the information from the email. Then another step that would go in and take the check from the external website. So these are some of the steps that it will kick off. So like, for example, a simple flow could look something like this, if you can see. Um, so it could look something like this. Is a very, very simple workflow where there is no complex logic involved, right? And then this typically goes into, let's say, a external website where it could go search for the vendor and get. Let me show you that part. Okay. I think it's still loading. Okay. So here it has come back with the qualification results. So if you can see, again, here it will show you the results, of course, which is where it matches, but it will also show you the execution steps of what it has done. Like how we have seen with the analysis next, it can show you what exact steps it has taken to be able to to be able to perform this matching or qualification criteria. So there's this thought process, right? It went and dynamically created a plan. It also is showing the execution process where it went and navigated to the website, searched for the company, handled the errors if it had faced any errors, and then it accessed the pages and did the extraction. All of this is what it figured it out based on the instructions that we have given, right? This is the vendor pre-qualification process example, extremely useful from a hyper automation standpoint, where you are able to now easily maintain your process and do it at a much lower TCO, both from build as well as maintain point of view. The last but one is the data experience, where especially for site reliability analysis, engineering, or checking on your infra health, the field sales assistants to be able to get data at the fingertips when it comes to understanding discounts or promotions that are required, and these kind of use cases are what we saw with the data experience side of things. Finally, the employee experience, where we've seen how agents can go to ServiceNow, create an incident, go to the procurement API to be able to check whether the inventory is available, especially for asset management. These are some of the examples that we have done with employee experience, right? So these are some of the use cases across multiple categories where we have implemented agentic AI. Again, this is the IT support assistant, right? Um, I'll not go through considering the time this particular demo, but it kind of outlines how an asset management request can go in and go across multiple systems and fetch you the fulfill the request for the from the employee. Okay. So that's this. Finally, as I initially mentioned, we've created this tool called Optimum, which will allow you to move from your existing, legacy chatbot technologies like Core.ai, Elo.ai, or even Power Virtual Agents, Bot Framework, Composer, or Google Dialogflow to be able to move to a Copilot Studio. We've created this in such a way that it would do the assessment, automatically create a design plan, and migrate into the Copilot Studio, bringing in both the generative AI capabilities as well as maintaining the use cases that have been implemented within your chatbots, right? So this is a very high level understanding of all the use cases that we have implemented across all these things. In fact, we have over a period of time, also uh, done a lot of case studies, and I don't know why they're not loading up, but um, these are some of the case studies, and we will share them with you, right? Over to you, Neha, for the next poll.
Thank you, Jagan. Thanks so much. So, the next poll should be up to you guys. How soon does your organization plan to deploy agentic AI and hyperautomation? This will basically help us understand if you're on the journey and if you're looking for some kind of help, we could definitely come in and support you with the same. Uh, or if you're planning to start the journey, we can come in and help you prioritize which use cases you should get started with and do some consulting there. So, because, yeah, I think everybody are going to get onboarded onto this journey. So, yeah, we are looking forward to supporting you with this. Mm, okay, I think interesting responses there that are coming up. We had a question that Dave has responded to. Meanwhile, if there are any questions that we want to take from the audience, let's see. Let me just. Yes. So there was this question, Jagan, that Dave has obviously answered. Is Copilot Studio the Microsoft equivalent of AWS Bedrock when it comes to building, deploying, and orchestrating AI agents? So I noticed
Yeah,
that
so
we have
Dave is the right
Satish and
person for that.
Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Dave has definitely responded back. Dave, do you want to add any comments to what you just mentioned?
Well, just if anyone's looking across the ecosystem of agent tooling, I mean, the one thing I'll say that stands out is yes, Copilot Studio is SaaS. So with some of these other tools, you can build agents, but you're responsible for deploying and paying for the infrastructure and all of the other resources around there. Copilot Studio comes out of the box. There is a cost per message, which is how we charge for it, but you're not responsible for the infrastructure, for the hosting, for anything else with it. When you need to, you can always use Azure AI Foundry to get more control. So if you want to leverage a custom model or a search index that you've already built in Azure, very simple to do that. You can even do it with other providers as well, just simply using custom connectors. But just note, as you're looking across that ecosystem, there's a lot of value to just having everything in the SaaS layer when you need it, much more agility, a ton more value without all of the other responsibilities. So keep that in mind as you look throughout the ecosystem.
Oh, we have another one from the same gentleman. How do you define guardrails for responsible adoption?
I mean, from our perspective, there's a ton of governance features that come out of the box. One of the big advantages we have with Copilot Studio is it is in the portfolio of Power Platform products, which has had a tremendous amount of capability when it comes to security, governance, monitoring, management, and just transparency and what's happening. So we're building on the shoulders of all of that capability. And of course, we've added some features that are specific to makers of agents. But generally, yeah, we've been leveraging all of those capabilities, plus the ability to plug in more advanced tooling as well. So say, for instance, you're using Microsoft Purview, you can now get detailed reports across the, Copilot plus agent ecosystem at Microsoft to see, hey, am I getting any unsafe prompts? What was blocked over the last couple days or weeks? And allowing you to go in and investigate both reactively as well as proactively getting details on what people are trying to build or where knowledge sources are falling down or missing responses. So we give you a ton of data to work with and ultimately give you full transparency in the platform to see what's happening.
Yeah, just
Great.
to add,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Go
Just
ahead.
to
Go
add
ahead,
to
Jagan.
that,
Yeah.
obviously, Microsoft provides the framework from a governance standpoint, and when we're working with customers, we're also extending them to the needs of the enterprise. For example, to be able to build the business KPI on top of what's available with respect to the adoption analytics, and additional controls that are required, self-service portals, so some of those additional things that we extend into when we do the governance. Governance is the single most important thing to think through when you do these implementations, to make sure that you have the full control of what's happening with these, after rolling out these features. So yeah, so that's the small thing that I wanted to add.
Great. Yep. Thank you. If anybody has any other question, you can feel free to raise your hand, or we can unmute you, and then we can have your question. Or else, if there's anything, please drop in on the chat box. We'll take it up, and maybe if needed, we'll uh, maybe reach out to you and have that clarified. Thank you all for joining in. Otherwise, thank you, Dave, for co-hosting along with us today. Thank you, Jagan, for speaking. Yep, it was our first webinar on hyperautomation with Agentic AI, and we see a lot more coming up. And looking forward to talking to all of you in person and seeing how we can collaborate on taking Agentic AI across your organization. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining in today. Yep. Jagan, you have something to say?
No, thank you. Thank
No.
you, everyone.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.